Hello, my beautiful soul. How are you? Firstly, I would love to welcome you back to the Fully Expressed podcast. This is the first episode for 2025, and I am so excited to be here talking to you. Excuse me, I've just got some energy coming up. It's coming out already. So in today's episode, I am going to be sharing a personal healing experience that I just had and am still integrating from. Something that I had set an intention for at the beginning of this year, and it is something that I have felt the calling or the pull towards me actually doing. Um, and I understand now after doing it why I was being pulled towards it. So in November of last year, probably even before that, I think um, I probably first felt the connection back in maybe July, August last year. And I felt the power of the medicine drum in a beautiful shamanic healing session that I had on a retreat, the Sake of Remembering retreat, which I've talked about before. And the power that it had, which allowed me to really drop into my body, really get out of my head, and start to express my beautiful light language. That was probably the first really strong connection that I felt to the drum, and then also being and experiencing the medicine drum at my Raw, Wild and Free retreats as well, because it's used in breath work. It's used in the breath work session that we do. And then again in November, I felt it when I was facilitating a healing for a client at the Seven Sisters Festival. And I was literally giving Reiki, and I was using my voice, and I heard the sound of the beating of the drum come through in the background by a fellow sister. And at that moment, felt so, I felt everything. I felt my energy just go from like an 8 to a 10, and I really felt the potency of the medicine of the drum that was coming through in the vibration. And I think since then I have set the intention that I really wanted to go to a workshop where I got to create my own medicine drum. So I found one by the Wilderness Within, which is hosted by the beautiful Laura Jane, and she facilitates these workshops on her private property, just outside or just before Castlemaine, in between Castlemaine and Harcourt. So I decided to go last weekend, and I wasn't really sure what I was expecting, but what I experienced was deeply emotional and really anchored me back into my purpose and my soul's mission of why I'm here to help other people and to be able to guide people on their own healing journeys. There is a specific medicine that has come through from this since I have attended the workshop, and I'll share a little bit about that in a moment. But I want to share a little bit about the feeling and the experience that I had. So, without giving away too many spoilers, because I want to leave a little bit of the feeling of anticipation and not knowing fully what to expect, because I always believe that that is the best way to go into any workshop or any retreat. Obviously, knowing why you're there and what you hope to get out of it, but not really knowing exactly what to expect, because then you can really be wowed, and you can really be present too, because then your mind is not being like, well, this is not what I actually expected. So yeah. So when I arrived, I was greeted with a beautiful, warm welcoming and hug and drumming to clear away energy, and welcomed into Laura's home, beautiful little home cottage on her property. And we sat in circle and started to connect, which you know that I love to do. I love to be in circle with fellow sisters and share stories and just be be connected. And so we spoke about our stories of how we came into this earth, how we came into this world through our birth process. And this is really the interesting part, because if you ever actually look at this process and then start to identify the similarities of your mother's experience and the traits that you possess. So, for instance, in my birthing story, or my mother's experience when I was born, she told me that she had to have her waters broken forcibly. Potentially, this is in the 80s, so potentially it was um, something that they put up into your cervix to break your water. I'm not sure. I'm not a mother, so I don't really know the details, but she had to have her water broken. And I feel as though that was me saying that I really wanted to stay in my cocoon a little bit longer, and I wasn't really ready to emerge or to be seen, because I've had some wounding around being seen and being heard, and I like to be in my shell, like in my cocoon, like this, um, all wrapped up and cozy. And I used to really struggle to come out of my shell, and that's why I used to use alcohol to help me get out of my shell and become more confident, which I'm sure you can relate to. So yeah, my birthing story, I really connected to that when my mum told me, especially after this experience, because I started to understand myself. Um, I mean, I kind of knew, I know who I am and all of those things, and I know my traits and my wounds and some of the things that I've had to relearn and process. But this experience really brought me back to myself and really brought up some confronting shadows or brought up shadows, but I will share that through the story. So the first day was beautiful. We were in circle, we were connecting and talking, and we got to choose our beautiful frames for our drums, intuitively, really allowing our wisdom of our bodies and our intuition to support us in that process and what we actually feel called to choosing. And we did the same for the hide or the cover of the drum. And once we chose these and connected with these parts and materials, we then started to create or cut out the shape and to cut using the hide. So the whole hide is used, so it is not wasted at all. And cutting out the strings which thread the drum cover onto the frame. So cutting these all up individually, which was quite a time-consuming process. And at the end of that, we let everything soak overnight so that it is more pliable and easy to use when you go to actually assembling your drum. So on the second day, we retrieved our skins, and they're obviously all wet and kind of like sloppy. And from there, it was really about having the free rein to just go and find a quiet place wherever you wanted to and craft and create and birth your drum. So this is probably the most this was the part where things started to get a bit sticky, and I started to fall into my mud, into the past. So I found a beautiful, beautiful spot on the property, which was I sat on a big, beautiful boulder that was anchored into the ground. There was a big, tall tree behind me that had grown this big, beautiful, like canopy of tall creeper vine. So it was completely kind of enveloped, and it felt like I was cocooned. I was quite safe, although I was a little bit nervous about snakes because it was quite hot. But I did it anyway. I sat on the boulder in my bikinis because it was hot, and I began this process of creating and really birthing my medicine drum. So the process is quite fiddly to begin with, because I think I had about 20 meters of this tine or string made out of the animal hide, and you have to thread the string into the holes on the skin to anchor it onto the frame. But you've kind of got, 10 meters on one side and 10 meters on the other side, and making sure they didn't get tangled or they were going in the right direction. And once I kind of worked out my process and my rhythm, it became a little bit easier to maneuver everything, while also keeping everything damp so it didn't dry up quickly. And I was okay up until I got it to a point where I didn't really know the next step or the next stage, and I kind of wanted to seek some support. Plus, it was quite warm and hot outside, so I went inside to the cottage where a few of the other sisters were creating their own drums, and the first thing that I noticed was my drum looked different. How I had thread my strings was different to everybody else, and kind of felt um, I felt like a sense of disappointment in myself at that point, and almost like I'd been through that process and I didn't have something beautiful to show for, or that my drum wasn't as pretty as everybody else's, um, or it wasn't perfect, because I definitely have an issue or have experienced issues with perfectionism, but always for the wrong reasons. Um, I always used to like things to be perfect, and probably still do to an extent. When before someone comes to your house, you make sure everything's tidy and perfect. They can't see a messy house. Yeah, so that's me. So when I realized that my drum was a little bit messy, I started to really drop into kind of a negative space. And in this setting, it was probably good because I was able to be really raw and vulnerable, and I was able to work through and process my emotions, um, even though at the time I didn't 100% know exactly what this was, or what the trigger was exactly, but I probably did. Um, and so I am inside and starting to feel this resentment and anger and disappointment and failure starting to set in. And I asked for some help to find out what the next step was. Once I got that, I ran straight back to my little cocoon area that was safe, and I just lost it. I lost it, and just started crying, tears streaming out of my face, down my cheek, and I just let everything out. And it was really beautiful to do. Um, and I got to the next stage of creation where I had tightened everything up, and then I decided that I was done in my little birthing sanctuary, and I wanted to go inside because I felt like I really needed support then after being so raw and vulnerable. So I went inside where it was much cooler, and I sat down with my drum and started to just look at it. And I think I was still feeling that sense of failure. And the facilitator came over to me and proceeded to kind of show me and ask me, how I wanted it to sort of come together and to start that completion process. And she kind of showed me, I could do this and do that and make it look like this. And I think I just lost it again emotionally and just broke down, sat there crying, and just needed to feel those feelings that I was feeling, allow them to come out. And once I had done that, I had immediately had the clarity, and I started to see my drum in a whole new light. It was like that clearing needed to happen for me to be able to release that level of disappointment in myself, in not being perfect, and seeing the beauty in imperfection, and in something being messy and really raw and rugged. Um, and it all started to come together. And I completed it by putting a beautiful stone that I found a connection with that day, and that became the handle. So you'll be able to see on my drum the stone on the back of it. So that was my experience. It was a really beautiful but deeply emotional experience of creating my drum. But a day or two after is when the medicine really landed, which was really about letting go of the need to look a certain way or for things to look a certain way, and really being okay if things are messy, if your house is a mess or untidy, if being okay with things being rough and raw and rugged, and it really just anchored me back into my medicine and what I'm here to teach and to help others with. So it was like this drum was holding up a mirror to me and going, this is your medicine, and this is what you need to experience, and this is what you need to support others in. So that was what was coming through, and I think um, really being okay with, or really not being so focused on the end result, and enjoying and embracing the process, because so much of the time we want to just kind of fast forward to the finished result, or the transformation. We want to go from A to B straight away. We want to go to A from A to C and skip B. Excuse me. So this was really a reminder to enjoy that process, because in that process is where all of that medicine was created and infused into that drum. So yeah, I think that's the lesson in my medicine drum, the medicine that I was given, and the medicine that I will continue to give to others. I wrote this down too, which is what my medicine drum is a symbol of. So my medicine is about embracing the shadow, the parts of ourselves that we've been taught to hide and suppress, a practice of unapologetic expression where we allow the raw, messy, and wild parts of our being to emerge, instead of internalizing our anger, our imperfections, or our vulnerabilities. We give them space to breathe and to be seen. In doing so, we free ourselves from the chains of expectations and awaken to a life that is deeply authentic, creative, and healing. So this was all of those things, and I'm so grateful that I got to have this experience. And I am grateful for the wisdom and the lessons and the medicine that it has provided and the clarity to reaffirm that what I'm here to do and how I can support others and support you in your healing journey, because we are all here to help each other and to share our wisdom with each other. This is what the medicine of the feminine is all about. And the history of the medicine drum is goes back through centuries. So it is really an honor to be able to have crafted a tool in which I can use now to share. So I'm super excited. I haven't used it just yet, but I am able to use it on Saturday for the first time when it's finally dry. Um, and I am hoping I'll be able to use it at my next event. So yeah, that's exciting. Um, I think that's it. I think that's it for today's episode. I have a busy month coming up. I've got the beautiful Bohemian Summer Festival happening next week, next weekend. And then after that, I've got my Raw Wild and Free retreat happening on the 28th of Feb to the 2nd of March. I have one room left and a couple of day passes. If you are wanting to come along, reach out to me or head to my website. But I am going to leave it there, and I hope you have a wonderful week, and I look forward to chatting to you